I promised you would pay me for every single thing I experienced in that place you call prison. Old Lin kidnapped Bukele's daughter despite the measures taken against him to prevent him from escaping. He succeeded, and it will destroy the most precious thing Bukele has. Stay until the end of the video and find out. Before starting, leave your registration with the like button and subscribe to our stories. You'll surely get caught. Now, activate the bell so we can start in March 2022. El Salvador experienced a historic moment. President Nayib Bukele, known for his firm stance against crime, launched an unprecedented offensive against gangs. This operation, known as the War on Gangs, marked a turning point in the fight against the violence that had plagued the country for decades since the beginning of his term in 2019. Bukele left, of course. One of its main objectives was to combat insecurity. Its focus was on dismantling the criminal structures that had taken deep root in Salvadoran society. The plan was not limited to repressive measures, but also included prevention and social reintegration programs. However, the 2022 operation was the most ambitious and risky of all. The trigger was a particularly violent weekend in March 2022, during which more than 80 homicides were recorded in a single day, an alarming figure even for a country accustomed to violence. Bukele reacted immediately by declaring a state of emergency that suspended certain constitutional rights, such as freedom of assembly and the inviolability of correspondence. This allowed security forces to act more freely and swiftly. The operation began with massive raids in neighborhoods controlled by gangs. Thousands of soldiers and police were deployed across the country, carrying out mass arrests in a matter of days. Authorities detained thousands of suspected gang members. Images of operations involving gang members, escorted by security forces, were widely disseminated, sending a clear message: the government was determined to regain control of the country. Bukele used social media, one of his favorites, to keep the public informed and mobilized. He published videos and photos of the operations, as well as defiant messages directed at the gangs. In one of his most memorable tweets, he wrote to the criminals, "I tell you, we will not back down. If you think you can intimidate us, you are wrong." However, the gang's response was swift. These organizations, which had controlled vast areas of the country for years, were not willing to give up without a fight. Threats against Bukele and his government increased. Attempts at attacks against officials and police officers and the gangs were reported. They promised retaliation, but the government did not stop the operations despite the threats. Bukele stood firm, redoubling his efforts and increasing the presence of security forces on the streets. He also implemented additional security measures to protect officials and their families. The situation was tense, and the country was in a constant state of alert. One of the most critical moments was when a gang plot to assassinate high-ranking government officials was discovered. Salvadoran intelligence managed to dismantle the plot in time, but the incident underscored the seriousness of the situation. Bukele responded by further reinforcing security measures and accelerating operations. The operation also had a significant media component. Bukele used his social media presence to keep the public informed and generate popular support. His messages, full of determination and defiance, resonated with a population tired of violence and insecurity. Bukele faced criticism from human rights organizations and sectors of the opposition, who denounced abuses and arbitrary arrests. As the operations progressed, concrete results began to emerge. Homicide rates dropped dramatically, and large quantities of weapons and drugs were seized. Gang leaders were captured or forced into hiding. The population began to feel a tangible change in security, and support for Bukele remained high. The impact of the war on gangs was profound and lasting, demonstrating that he was willing to take drastic measures to confront one of the country's most deep-rooted problems. Despite the threats and challenges, the president managed to implement an operation that, although controversial, achieved significant results in the fight against gangs. In the days following the operation, the atmosphere in the country became increasingly tense as the gangs felt the pressure. The weight of the government offensive when many gang leaders saw themselves cornered, resorted to intimidation tactics. The first sign of these threats emerged when Bukele began receiving anonymous messages warning him to stop. "We know where you live," said one of the first messages, followed by precise details about his residence and daily routine. These initial threats were taken seriously, but did not seem to deter the president, who continued with his iron-fisted strategy. However, as the operations intensified and more gang members were arrested, the threats also escalated. They became more personal and specific. On one occasion, Bukele received a handwritten letter that described in detail the daily itinerary of his wife and young daughter. "If you don't stop, we will come after your family," read the end of the letter. The president responded with increased security measures. The perimeter of his residence was reinforced with more agents, and strict protocols were implemented to protect his family. Despite these concerns, the pressure and risk the gangs did not diminish. They were determined to use any means to make Bukele realize his fate at one of the most critical moments. Salvadoran intelligence intercepted communications between gang members who were discussing detailed plans to kidnap the president's daughter. The plan included constant surveillance and the use of unmarked vehicles to follow the presidential family. The intention was to force Bukele to release the detained gang members in exchange for the safety of his daughter. Upon learning of this threat, Bukele decided to temporarily send his family out of the country to a safe place whose location was only known to a handful of people he trusted. Despite the physical distance, the threats did not cease. Social media was filled with violent messages directed at Bukele and his family. "We know where you are. There is no safe place for you or your family." This was a constant feature of the messages that reached in several cases. These messages included photographs of his family taken without his consent, increasing the feeling of vulnerability and danger. The Bukele administration responded with greater force, intensifying operations and redoubling efforts to dismantle the gang's communication networks. However, each advance seemed to unleash a new wave of threats. In a televised speech, Bukele declared, "They will not intimidate us. We will not stop. This government is determined to eradicate organized crime at all costs." The threats not only affected the president and his family, but also other members of the government. High-ranking officials and their families began receiving similar threats. Security measures were expanded to protect everyone involved in the operation. However, the constant tension and risk grew exponentially. A particularly alarming incident occurred when a group of gang members attempted to enter the residence. From a senior official, although the attempt was thwarted by security, the message was clear. The gangs were willing to take their threats to the ultimate consequences. This incident led Bukele to implement even more drastic measures, including increased surveillance and coordination with international security agencies. As the operation continued, the psychological toll on Bukele and his team became evident. The sleepless nights, emergency meetings, and the constant concern for the safety of his loved ones began to take their toll. However, Bukele remained firm in his resolve. He repeatedly reiterated that his commitment to the country's security was above any personal threat. The situation reached a climax when the gang sent a video directly to the president. In the video, a gang leader with his face covered explicitly threatened to kidnap and kill Bukele's daughter. If the operations were not stopped, the cold message and calculated, it was designed to instill terror and force the president to reconsider his position. Far from being intimidated, Bukele used this video as an opportunity to show his determination in an act of defiance. He broadcast the video publicly and responded live. "We will not stop. They will not break us. My commitment to El Salvador is unbreakable." Bukele's war against Old Man Lin. The operation to capture Old Man Lin was meticulous and highly confidential. Security forces, backed by military intelligence and undercover agents, carried out a nighttime assault in one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the country. Old Man Lin, known for his cunning and brutality, had eluded authorities for years, but that night his luck changed. After a brief but intense confrontation, he was finally captured. From the moment of his arrest, Old Man Lin displayed a defiant attitude while being escorted by the police. His eyes burned with a mixture of hatred and determination. Upon arriving at the prison, the first thing he did was demand to speak with Bukele. Although the president initially refused, he finally agreed to a brief meeting with the gang leader, where the two met face-to-face in a heavily guarded interrogation room. With a sarcastic smile, Old Man Lin looked the president directly in the eyes. "This is not over," Bukele said in a firm voice. "I will escape from here no matter how much it costs me, and when I do, I will pay you. I will not rest until I kidnap your daughter. I want you to feel the same fear that you have instilled in us." The threat was clear and personal. Bukele, unfazed, responded, "You are not going anywhere, and I will not allow you to continue terrorizing our country." The news of Old Man Lin's capture and his threats resonated throughout El Salvador. The media covered it extensively. The verbal confrontation between the two men, for many, was further evidence of Bukele's determination to wipe out the gangs, but for others, it was a sign that the conflict was far from resolved and could escalate dangerously within the prison. Old Lin quickly began to consolidate his power, despite being behind bars. His influence over other inmates and contacts abroad allowed him to continue making threats against Bukele and his family. These threats became more frequent and detailed. Government intelligence services discovered several escape plans involving bribery, riots, and even underground tunnels. Bukele, for his part, did not underestimate Old Lin's ability to carry out his threats. He doubled security measures around his family and ordered the gang leader to be transferred to a maximum security cell, isolated from the rest of the inmates. He also intensified operations against the gangs, seeking to dismantle any rescue attempt or retaliation. The president used his influence on social media to keep the population informed and sent a message of strength and determination. He published constant updates on the situation and reiterated his commitment not to give in to threats. Old Man Lin will not see the light of day. He declared again in one of his most shared tweets, "El Salvador will not be held hostage by any criminal." Meanwhile, in prison, Old Man Lin continued to plot plans. His reputation and the loyalty of his followers allowed him to maintain a constant flow of information and resources. Despite being isolated, he managed to communicate with the outside world through clandestine methods. His orders continued to be carried out, and the threats against Bukele's family continued unabated. By the way, if you're enjoying the video, we invite you to give us a like and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our news videos. We continue the escape and revenge of Old Man Lin. The escape plan was activated one stormy night, taking advantage of the distraction of the severe weather inside the prison. Lin had bribed a key guard, who deactivated the security cameras and opened a series of doors. Strategically, Lin, with the help of several internal accomplices, slipped through the dark corridors to an underground tunnel patiently dug by his allies. This tunnel connected to a sewer that emptied kilometers from the prison. Once outside, he was met by a vehicle that quickly took him to safety. The news of his escape was a devastating blow to the authorities and an alarming sign for Bukele. For weeks, Lin remained in the shadows, constantly changing hiding places to avoid being tracked. During this time, he not only planned his revenge, but also kept a close watch on Bukele's family. He discovered that the president's daughter attended an exclusive and well-guarded school. LN infiltrated the school's security detail using false identities and bribes until he obtained all the information necessary to carry out his plan. The day of the kidnapping was carefully chosen on a seemingly normal morning. A group of armed men disguised as police officers entered the school under the guise of a security inspection. Within minutes, they headed to Bukele's daughter's classroom. They neutralized the guards and removed her from the school. The kidnapping was quick and efficient, and in less than 15 minutes, the girl was in a vehicle speeding away. The operation was a shock for Bukele. Upon learning of the kidnapping, he felt indescribable anguish. He immediately mobilized all available security forces, ordering roadblocks and raids in the streets. known Mara hideouts, but Old Man Lin had anticipated these movements and stayed one step ahead. For the next few hours, the tension was unbearable. Bukele received constant updates, but none of them brought any good news. Lin, aware of the president's desperation, made a phone call. "I warned you, Bukele. This is just the beginning. You will feel the same terror you have inflicted on my people. Now I want you to release all the captured gang members and transfer a considerable sum to the account I will send you. If you don't, you will never see your daughter again." Bukele, devastated but determined, knew that giving in was not an option. As the hours passed, hope seemed to fade. The desperation on the president's face was evident, and the entire nation followed the drama with their hearts in their mouths. However, luck was about to change. A group of special forces, equipped with advanced technology, managed to intercept a communication signal between Ellen and her collaborators. This signal led to a vehicle that matched the description of the one used in the kidnapping. An operation was quickly organized to intercept the car. The final confrontation was tense and swift. An isolated road, Lin's vehicle was surrounded by tactical units. Old Man Lin's men attempted to resist, but the superiority of the police forces was overwhelming. Within minutes, they managed to disarm the kidnappers and secure the release of Bukele's daughter. Old Man Lin, in a desperate attempt to escape, was wounded and recaptured. The rescue was a mixture of relief and triumph. Bukele's daughter was returned to her father safe and sound. Although deeply affected by the experience, Bukele, with tears in his eyes, hugged his daughter and thanked the men and women who risked their lives to save her. The capture of Old Man Lin was a significant victory, but also a reminder of the constant danger the president represented. In a live broadcast, he declared today that we have shown that we will not give in to terror. Old Man Lin will return to the prison from which he should never have left, and his reign of terror will come to an end. We will not rest until completely dismantle the gangs that have ravaged our country. The nation, united in relief and determination, saw in this victory a symbol of the resilience and strength of its leader and its people. As Old Allen was taken back to prison, this time under even stricter surveillance, it was clear that their threat had been neutralized, but the fight against the gangs would continue until a future free of fear was ensured for all Salvadorans. And so we come to the end of this video. If you liked it, I invite you to give us a like so we can continue making more videos like this. Also, don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any of our new videos. I wish you a great day. Until next time.